Welcome everybody to Tech Breakfast, Halloween morning, and we have three people today to talk about what they're doing. Preston, is it Whiting? Yeah,
Yeah.
Whiting or Whiting. He will talk about what's going on at Black Lion Audio, and we have Frederik Knop. Am I pronouncing it correctly, Fred? Yeah,
Almost. No, call me Freddie.
Freddie. Okay.
Not even my grandma calls me Frederick these days.
And then Chad Kelly is going to clue us in on United Studio Tech. So uh, just a caution, mute your mic unless you have a very close mic, you know what I mean? Because we don't want background noise to trigger your thing. So at the end, I have one announcement. Sound Toys is tomorrow is the end of the embargo, and they're going to offer a freebie, but I can't talk about it until tomorrow morning. So if you don't mind, you can go to my Facebook page and I'll put the information on there and you can get this free plug-in they're going to have. So Sound Toys is going to give away, and also you can use the plug-in credit to buy into their whole bundle, Studio Toys 5. So that's pretty cool, I think. I don't know what the bundle, how much they're going to charge for that, but I'm sure it's going to be reduced. So anyway, Sound Toys tomorrow. Check in my Facebook page, get a free plugin. A nice one too, I might add. I've used it before. So let's start out. We're going to have Preston is going to start out with Black Lion Audio.
Hello, everybody. Barry, thank you for having us on this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I think I probably should start with a little bit of background of Blackline Audio, sort of our history and my personal journey here. Um, I am VP of Operations at Blackline Audio. I started here back in 2012 as an intern. So it's been a really kind of crazy journey. The company is actually really special to me personally. Um, I was I would say I was always like a bright kid, but I did not apply myself intellectually until I got to Blackline Audio. When I was very passionate about music, and when I walked in the door at BLA and I met what seemed to me like the smartest people on earth tinkering with electronics, that led to superior sound quality, which was what I was after in my personal music in my personal studio. It sort of lit a fire in me to apply myself from an intellectual perspective and just really dive into the work here. So that was back in 2012. Like I said, I started as an intern. I've been in shipping. I've done mods. I've done probably every job that you could possibly do here. And that there was a steady progression there till I got the VP of operations, which I'm very blessed to have had that journey. Um, a little bit about Black Lion, the company. Um, it started out as a modification business. We still do mods to this day. Mods are very ingrained in our DNA and the way that we approach design. Um, so back in the day, like I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you do remember when there was the LE Pro Tool systems and the very expensive HD systems. The HD systems were prohibitively expensive for many people, including myself and the techs at BLA. So we wanted to figure out how we make these LE systems compete with the big boys. So we started tinkering. I have a mod that we used to do. I don't know if you guys remember the 003. Does anybody remember this?
Sure.
Like one of the
Oh,
LEs.
sure, sure.
Yeah. So this was like the 00, the Digi 002 and the Digi 003 were one of our most successful modifications and one that we modified probably the heaviest. I got an internal shot here. It looks pretty busy in there. A lot of that stuff actually is not stock components.
Preston, you're showing us a screenshot of the new
Yes.
Revolution. Can
Yes,
we go to your camera?
sure. You don't see him up in the upper right there?
Well, we see him very small, but he's showing us the inside
You
of
got it. You
Oh
got
yeah,
it.
that's not actually my screen.
Sorry. How about we unshare? Stop the share. Is that better?
Cool. We'll definitely get to the revolution momentarily. But yeah, so I was just showing some of these internals of old 003 mod, which is sonically is still a unit that stands up to the best of the best in the market today. Unfortunately, it's Firewire, so the connectivity with connectivity is still.
Start playing guitar.
Sorry.
Eric, you need to mute. Eric Miron.
I muted him.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's still an excellent sounding unit. It's just the computer connectivity. You got to basically keep an old computer to keep that guy running at this point. We would do things like in our modifications, we discovered that component choice is very critical, and not just as far as like ICs or converters are concerned. It's actually like the environment in which these components exist is super important. The power decoupling is paramount. The clocking inside the device is really, really important as well. The op amps that you select, the signal path capacitors, all those sort of variables add up throughout the circuitry and throughout the signal path. So we learned a lot with auditioning different components and figured out there are cases where a converter that is phenomenal on paper can an average converter can compete with a converter that's phenomenal on paper if you place it in a superior environment, if you decouple it right, if you put the right surrounding circuitry. So for instance, in that 003 mod, like I said, clocks are really important. We would install a new clock card in there to replace the existing clocking that's inside of that unit. We would also take the analog board and give it its own power supply. So we'd separate the power from the digital board and give the analog board a separate power supply. And on the card itself, we'd make sure that the op amps were fully decoupled, that we had the best op amps for that circuit in there. And those things sort of just added up to really improve the sound of the unit. So once we had all that knowledge under our belt of modifying, we still recognize that there are certain limitations in modifications. So the things that we couldn't do, we had to do from the ground up. So that's how the Revolution interface line came about. The Revolution interface line is an interface of ours that is built from the ground up. The first iteration of that is the Revolution 2x2. It's a 2-in, 2-out unit tabletop. We wanted to start with a low channel count and really get the sound of those inputs and outputs where we wanted them to be, and then gradually build up the line. So we have successfully done that. This was the first iteration. Like I said, the 2x2. We have a 6x6, which is also a tabletop unit. It's a little larger than this one, a little bit more expanded I/O. And then we have the big boy that we just came out with, which is the Revolution 14x16. That is the one that Barry was just showing on the screen. I also have a physical unit that I can show you guys.
Yeah,
So
I can put my screenshot back if
Yeah.
everyone's okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, now would be an appropriate time for that.
Hey, Barry, a quick question. Is this a DAC or a mic pre? What are we looking at?
This is an interface. So um,
Okay.
you got mic pre's, you got A to D's and D to A. So it's kind of like the centerpiece of your studio. If we go from left to right, you got the big knobs there. You got channel 1 and channel 2, which are actually all-tour preamps. We wanted to put in boutique style preamps inside of the interface. You guys may know most interfaces are attempting to be like an all-in-one solution. So typically the preamps on there are I would say vanilla. They're pretty like uh they're not too colorful basically. So we wanted to give the option of having some colorful preamps on the front end along with some more standard preamps as well. So if you look from left to right, the big knobs is actually our Altour preamp. The Altour preamp is it's kind of a hybrid preamp. It has a fast IC based front end with the output transformer as well. So it gives you a lot of that transient detail and then some color on the back end to kind of color your tracks up. So the smaller knobs, if you go further to the right, channels 3 and 4, those are our Revolution preamps, which are, I would say, a little more standard of a preamp for an interface, kind of playing in a safe zone, a little more vanilla. But it's not a all-in-one chip like a lot of the preamps that we've seen over the years of modifying interfaces. We wanted to use more of a IC-based circuit, but not like an all-in-one chip. The all-in-one chips don't give us the ability to really tailor the sound. And our minds at Blackline Audio, we've been tweaking things for the last 15 years. So we wanted to be able to tweak these circuits, even if we're going for a cleaner sound in channels 3 and 4. Something else that's really cool about the 14 by 16 is we have insert points that are selectable from the front of the unit. Sorry, let me grab this guy. So yeah, we have inserts that are selectable on the front of the unit. So the preamps on channels 1, 2, 3, and 4, even if you choose to not use this device down the line, let's say computer connectivity becomes an issue, these preamps will never be obsolete because you could basically use them as standalone, which we think that is a excellent value for the life of this product. One other unique thing that we put in the Revolution 14 by 16 is a hardware-based headphone mixer. So if you look further to the right, you'll see there's a mix edit button, and then you have input 1, 2, 3, 4, playback 1, 2, 3, and 4. What that allows you to do is have a zero latency headphone mix that you can tailor the ratio of each input to taste quickly through hardware, which we feel is when you're tracking, you don't want to kill the vibe. You want to get things set up really quickly. And we thought it was a great idea to, although software is really convenient, a lot of people like tactile control over things, especially in a tracking situation. Because like I said, it's all about timing and vibe and, not interrupting the creative process with technical things. So that's a really great feature on here as well. It does have BNC inputs and outputs, which are clocking. We're kind of one of the leaders in clocking. Like we sort of pioneer and pay a lot of attention to clocking. This device is no exception. We think we have a really excellent clock in the 14 by 16, and we wanted to give you the ability to use this as a master clock as well. Lastly, we have the HEDD inputs and outputs, as well as the SPDIF inputs and outputs, which will allow you to expand the unit when your I/O needs change. And we have a companion unit, which is the Revolution Expander. So this is a great partner for that 14 by 16 when you need more analog inputs and outputs. This device is very simple, no frills, but excellent conversion. So you're going to get an additional 8 analog inputs and an additional 8 analog outputs. It's a really great partner for the 14 by 16, but it does not have to be partnered with the 14 by 16. You can expand any ADAT capable interface that you choose to use with the Revolution expander as well. Yeah, so as far as interfaces are concerned, we've just been taking our knowledge of circuitry over the last 15 years and building these guys from the ground up, doing some of the things that were sort of, things that we couldn't do in the modification, we're able to do from the ground up. So we're really proud of that.
Preston, tell me how many inputs and outputs can you do with that little 1U box?
With the 1U, it's 14 by 16, so
14 in and 16 out.
Yeah, but that's including the digital I/O. So you got that 4 analog inputs, 4 analog outputs, and then you have 2 SPDIF inputs and outputs and 8 ADAT inputs and outputs. And then you also have an additional headphone feed that makes up the 16 for the output side.
And it's all over USB-C, I guess.
Huh? It is USB-C connectable. So yes, it's something that we're very proud of. I mean, it's been very rewarding to take the experience that we had in modifications over the years and to put it into a device that we have no limitations on and could build from the ground up. And it's been very rewarding. One other product that I would like to touch on, and I think actually has a cool story, and it's one of our most successful products, is the Bluey 1176 compressor that we have. It's basically a clone of Chris Lord-Alge's #1 Blue Stripe compressor that he has, and he reached out to us because of that modification experience. He basically had this vintage unit that had been modified over the years by technicians, not to try to improve it, just to simply keep it working. I mean, it's a device from, I think the 50s or 60s. So just to keep it working, it ended up accidentally getting modified over the years. And since we're the kings of modification, he knew that that unit has something special about it, that he's got a total of 4. The other 3, he didn't like on his lead vocals as much as this one. So he figured it must be the things that, the repairs that particular unit had taken on that gave it those special qualities. So he reached out to us and we were able to fly out to his studio and examine the modifications that were in there. And what we found was there were some components in there that were not the original values, and sort of the stuff that the tech had on hand that he used sort of was like a mistake, like like happy accident sort of situation. But we were able to decipher what those things were and recreate it in our own version, which I'll grab here. Now, this product's been out on the market for a while. But I thought it'd be a really great idea to touch on it just because it's one of our most loved products, and it comes from that same heritage and lineage of understanding, the modifications that were inside of it, and we were able to create a 1-to-1 version. So now that special compressor that CLA has on his lead vocals is available.
You have a wet dry, huh?
Oh yeah, that was the one modern deviation that we thought was a great idea, was to put the wet dry on it for modern workflows. But everything else we tried to replicate as close as possible to the vintage unit, and I think we really hit the mark there.
So I found in your press kit, I found a kind of a cool thing, the 500 rack, which seems like it would really. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah,
Does everyone see that?
yeah, PBR 8500. Yeah, this was sort of like it was an idea that came about just out of searching for convenience. I mean, a lot of people are
Well,
into 500.
I see right away two things I have not seen
Uh,
are the patch bay, which is pretty cool. You have a TT patch bay over there that is in parallel with the XLRs and the
exactly.
DB25. So I can't quite read what the bottom six are, but obviously the top eight and bottom eight are inputs and outputs to the modules. Great idea.
It's
Yeah,
mulch. There's two mulch at the
Right,
bottom.
mults, right.
yeah,
Well,
that
bottoms
that
are
allows,
mults, okay.
yeah, yeah. So that allows you the ability to take a signal
Right,
one pair out and process it on two different other modules for parallel processing and quickly evaluating
right.
different
Great
change.
idea.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean the whole 500 series format is about convenience and sort of traveling around with your mobile setup. So you don't want to also have to travel with a patch bay or deal with rearranging modules. So putting that on the front plate, we think was a added convenience that was kind
It's
of a no
power. I
brainer.
see it's got a wall wart or whatever you call it, power supply, which all of them do nowadays. Keep their
Yeah,
switchers and keep the noise out of the box, so the power supplies are
yeah,
remoted.
yeah. It's a good idea to keep that power supply as far away from the modules as possible. In particular, with the PBR 8500, it was also a necessity because where the power supply could go, we have that patch bay there. So
Yeah,
that was also a necessity of the design. But yeah,
awesome.
one we're proud of. We have gold plated jacks. We have a whole patch bay series as well, and the PBR 8500 is a relaunch of our 500 series box with the gold plated connect jacks for enhanced connectivity. Yeah, it's just a great product that's really convenient. We also have some switches on the back that allow for easy linking of stereo pair modules. So modules that are capable of using the internal stereo link pins in the unit. You can engage and disengage that feature on the back panel with those linking switches.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Chad. We're trying to keep it about 15 minutes presentation. If anybody have any questions, or you can put them in the chat. Let's see here. Nothing yet. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Chad. Unless you have more.
I'm done.
Oh, okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks for thanks for doing that. All right. Uh, Frederik, are you still around? He's got a Halloween. He's in Germany, by the way, Berlin.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Awesome. So Fred is here from HEDD, HEDD, and he's going to talk about his speakers. I guess that's one of them behind you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I'll come back to that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you mind allowing me to share screen? Because I do have a
Okay. Walk me
little.
through how I know you can do that. What do I do? Click on share and uh,
I know what to do in the German Zoom, but let me
I know you
see.
can do it, but I have not actually done it.
Um,
I have to give you permission to share.
oh yeah. Exactly. There's
Anybody?
a
Anybody?
green button. There's a green button.
Yep.
Share.
Yes.
And
But
I
Go
think
ahead.
Harry,
Yeah, Michael.
if you go to the participants, you can make him a co-host,
Right.
and then he can
Oh,
do
Got
whatever he
it.
wants.
do you see that
I'm
already?
I'm doing it.
Great.
More
That's
co-host
great.
participants. Okay. Looks
Are
like
you
it worked.
are you seeing the presentation already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's been done. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I think Adam Kagan put us together at some point, and we met each other at the Los Angeles event a few weeks ago. I am basically one of the two founders of Head Audio in Berlin. The other founder is my father. We are, yeah, what we do, I will explain. I think my approach will be more to give you a little bit of an introduction to the brand and the products that we make, and hopefully to also bring across what makes us special and where we are seeing our focus for now and in the future. Back in the 70s, you said we should do it a little fun, so I dug out like a few photos. So this is like back in the 70s when my father was still basically in his physics study at the Technical University in Berlin, and he's a classical musician as well as a audio tech nerd essentially, and he started a little hi-fi store in the 70s called Audio Level, which was in the city center of, back in the days, West Berlin. We both basically grew up on the west side, so on the west side of the wall, of the Berlin Wall. And this is a picture of his first hi-fi store, and he sold pretty much everything that was hot back in the days. All the like quirky, interesting designs that were out there. And one particular loudspeaker caught his attention, and it's not exaggerating when I say it kind of changed his life and also the life of some of the pro audio industry. And that's the speaker you see here on the very left, called the ESS Trans R. This is what it looks like on the left. That's the full system. And then on the right side, you see basically the tweeter device that it had. And this was actually invented by a German-American physicist called Oscar Heil. Oscar was a real physicist with real physicist topics, but on the side, he was a crazy, passionate hobby speaker designer, essentially. And he came up with a lot of really interesting things. Some of them are patented, other aren't anymore. But one of the things he did was this thing called the air motion transformer, which my father heard in this speaker for the very first time, and it created this like really magical moment for him, and mainly because of the high-end quality of these speakers. And you probably all know the Adam Audio brand, which we also founded back in the late 90s. And then you're probably familiar with the yellow, tweeters that are folded into a magnetic field. You see that here. And what my father's main accomplishment was, based on this experience with Oscar, they knew each other quite well, was to bring it in a more compact and kind of reliable format, which you could use to actually do mass-produced studio monitors. And after a few failed attempts to make hi-fi brands in Germany, he eventually founded Adam back in 1999. This was when I was in my early 20s. And so I was there, but I wasn't really a part of Adam because I was a musicologist, or I was in a musicology department back in the days. And this is one of the pictures of my dad with.
Hey, Freddie, Michael Boddicker tried, I assume, to try to log on or try to go to your website. He got a 404. So I don't know what that is.
It was on your new headphones, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. But I was just jumping ahead to look at the headphones, and it came up with an error message. Just for your information, you can look at it later.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So basically, this brand of ours, the HEDD Audio brand, is it kind of is a result of Adam having serious problems. Back in 2014, my father left the company, and he was already almost 70. So we teamed up, me wanting to help him to get on his feet again, essentially. And then it became very serious and fun and adventurous quite quickly. So I decided to stick around. And what we do mainly, obviously, is studio monitors, all active studio monitors. We have analog solutions, we have DSP powered solutions, and we do the headphone, which is based on a full range interpretation of these air motion transformer tweeters. So that's really special and unique, and it has opened us a lot of doors. We are more what Adam was in the first 5-6 years. We are very much about local manufacturing. We do everything in-house, from the prototyping to the actual production, the shipping, the marketing, the sales, everything that's important for a hardware manufacturer, we do basically behind this wall behind me. And you see here some of the, some impressions from our production. And also this is a beautiful picture of a folding device which we use in order to bring together these AMT drivers, because they're, first of all, it's just a big Kapton-based stripe with aluminum folds on it. And then you have to literally hand fold them through these devices. And we have 3 full-time ladies, actually, that make these drivers on a day-to-day basis. We do have a full-on studio monitoring line covering 2-ways and 3-ways, and also subwoofers. What I'm showing you now is basically what the motor of all these monitors is, and then I'll just run you through the USPs real quick. They all obviously have our AMT drivers. We make no difference depending on the price point. It'll always be the same air motion transformer. They have DSP shark boards because we wanted to do 2 special things with the hope to make the speakers better. I'll be talking about this in a second. You see here already on the right side the plug, like a foam kind of plug that can be inserted into the base ports, and then you can access a specific tuning that is basically addressing the speaker in its closed form. So you can pick between basically 2 speaker philosophies. If you say, broadcast engineers or people who work in classical music or in acoustically recorded music often use the closed version of the speakers because it gives them a better precision in the bass area at the cost of some sound pressure. This is the kind of trade that you're signing when you use them closed. Or if you want more access to higher SPL, you can obviously leave the ports open. And so this was one of the reasons why we went into the whole crazy DSP rabbit hole, because we wanted to do that. And the other thing is that we wanted to find a solution to phase align the speakers. We used that with the help of a tool called the HEDD linearizer, which is essentially it has the impulse responses of the speakers coded in, and then we use FIR filtering to compensate for the time delay issues in the speakers. Again, at the cost of some latency in this case, but it really adds to the quality of the speakers, and it's obviously switchable if you're in a critical recording situation. We don't have a lot of models. We have the Type 20 MK2, which is a very compact 3-way monitor. That is kind of the product for us. It's the best-selling monitor that we do because I think it just covers the most ground. It can be used in smaller home recording setups as well as in pretty large recording studios and everything in between. So that's the one for us, especially also in the US. We have more compact models like the Type 7. There's also Type 5. We use them lately more in Atmos situations as ceiling solutions in Atmos setups. And there is the big guy here, basically picking up on what we've designed at Atom under the S3A, S3X label. We call it the Type 30 MK2. And they all have the exact same features that I've just introduced you to. That's one of the big subwoofers that we make, 12-inch sub. And I just wanted to mention that for the Atmos solutions, we have teamed up with ISO Acoustics. They've provided us with, basically we did like mounting gear together with them so that everything can be hung or attached to whatever wall you might have, ceiling, back walls. So we can, like Genelec, like Neumann, provide solutions from us to cover every possible scenario. These are a few beautiful pictures of Atmos systems that we've built in the last 1 or 2 years. This is G-Lab. We're very strong in Korea, which surprised me. It still surprises me, but it's a really important market for us. This is a place called the Mastering Academy in Hamburg. They did some like soffit mounting of the speakers as well. This is a studio in Kent in the UK. And last not least, before I start talking more about the headphones, we do a fully stackable analog system called the HEDD Tower Mains. We showcased them as well at the SIR event a few weeks ago in Los Angeles. And those will be put into the VK showroom as well quite soon, around NAMM time. That's a whole different story. It's basically picking up on our heritage in analog speaker designing, and it's its own basically chapter within the story of HEDD, so to say. This is Gold Digger's studio on Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles. What really changed our path, and it's probably the most defining, was probably the most defining moment for us in our only 7 years journey, is that we figured out something that we've never really been able to figure out during the Atom decade. And that was to bring the AMT driver into a headphone. It's always been like an idea or a conversation, but I think it's fair to say that my dad never really considered it possible. But the vibe of starting a new brand, what can we do differently? How can we stand out? Is in a situation where everything is not as complicated as in a big company, made it possible to actually sit down and give this time and resources and really explore whether it's possible or not. And what you see? Yeah. Is there a question? I hear some with mic. Oh, it's better now. I'm almost done. Then we can go to questions as well. So what you see here on the right side is a Neumann speaker. Just seeing that. But what you also see is my father listening to a full range air motion transformer tweeter, essentially. And what we've built from that, you can see on the left side, this is the very first early, extremely quirky and super heavy prototype, which still lives here among us, and it's still really fun to look at it from time to time. It showed us that it's actually possible to play very low frequencies with AMTs, because the rule set in headphones is so drastically different, because you're only dealing with a fraction of the sound pressure, that it was a very impressive first moment. That being said, the frequency response was all over the place. This was not anything you could ever sell anyone, but it showed us that it's essentially possible. This is still basically a gigantic air motion transformer tweeter. So all the folds in the system share the exact same depth next to each other and the exact same width as well, which is the case for every AMTs out there. But what we had to do in order to control the frequency response and to get more access to the actual frequency response and massaging it into something else was to actually open up on the idea of making variable folds. So it was really like a trial and error year, essentially, with I think 15 or 16 different versions of that. And what you can see here, it's not super easy to see, but you can kind of see it, is that the folds on the outside of the driver are closer to each other than the ones in the middle. And also towards the middle, it becomes a little flatter. And you see it here with the magnetic material. It's kind of has this like little curve to stay as close as possible to the actual folds in order to move them. And this idea was crucial in order to make a good sounding device with obviously mixing and mastering and audio post-production in mind. This is basically a close photo of the driver that we use in the headphone #1. And we had some really great first attention for the first headphone, but I'm happy admitting that from nowadays perspective, the only thing we really nailed with it was the sound. And the rest was still very much improvable, especially the weight. This thing weighed more than 700 grams, like 720 grams, and it was for many just a little too much. And also, obviously, the visual aspect of this headphone wasn't for everyone. But at the same time, it created a lot of great energy in the brand, and a lot of people wrote about it, and we got this amazing Sound on Sound review and a bunch of other really great reviews. So it really helped the brand to become more unique and change the perception of the HEDD brand, bringing us a little closer to being seen as an independent company with our own ideas, essentially. But the mission for the successor of the Headphone 1, which came out last year, obviously was to bring down the weight, to rethink ergonomics, to take in feedback from both the pro world and the audiophile world, because we're selling a lot of these into the, well, how can I say, the obsessed headphone collectors world. If you're aware of the HEDD forum and the Can Jam shows, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's its own bubble with, you know, lots of passion for interesting headphone designs, and this is a part where we're also participating. This is a picture of the Headphone 2, which is a mixing, mastering focused headphone. It's open back with an emotion transformer. It has an impedance that isn't very friendly when it comes to like budget in audio interfaces. So usually recommended to run them through, you know, something like an RME, ADA DAC, or, you know, any device that has a little more juice for headphones that aren't dynamic. Planar headphones have the same kind of problem, that they need some extra power to perform best and reach certain, you know, volume, obviously. This has a 25% weight reduction over the first one, so it sits around like 530, I think, grams is what it is. So that's a significant step into the right direction of not being an alien among other headphones anymore. And yeah, obviously we're handcrafting everything we do in Berlin. You see a few pictures here, like looking inside of the motor, so to say, with the damping material in the middle. This is the headband here is also special in the sense that it's a strap system where you can adjust the position on your head independently from the actual clamp force. So you can really kind of, you know, find your fit. And this was something we always really wanted to do, is because we are aware. My background is mastering as well, so I'm aware of how important headphones can be, and that, you know, it's not a good headphone if you can only wear it for 30 minutes and then you have to, you know, get some relief from it. So that's also something we've learned, and I think we got much better when it comes to the ergonomic and feel of these devices. And this is basically just everything that is included in the box. It comes with a carrying case, extra pads, symmetrical and asymmetrical connectors. You know, this is all very important, I think, to succeed among all these great headphones that are out there. There's just a quick view on the people that we've been working with lately. From everything from hip-hop legends to great, amazing studios, Jet Blake, Miraval Studios, Heber Kadri is a wonderful mastering engineer in New York. So we have our family together that help us promote the products, and yeah, that's really pretty much everything I wanted to bring across. We are on our way to become an hopefully equally important headphone manufacturer. That's really part of the vision and the mission. And in that sense, I can only thank you very much.
You got it. Thanks so much. A question or two in the chat. Do you have the chat, Brad?
Yeah, let me check. Oh, quite a few here.
Barry?
Yeah. Andy?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
In reference to the ports that you can plug up, what is the roll-off frequency?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I mean, it depends on the model. Something like that in the back can play as low as 32 hertz, and the
Okay.
actual corner frequency doesn't change much between closed and ported. It's not. It doesn't really affect the frequency range. It really affects more the the basically the quality of the bass, and the louder you hear, the quicker the model will exhaust and will
So,
start to.
so you're saying 70 hertz for one of the models. Is it lower on the other one, like at 50 hertz or 80 hertz or?
No. It's a lot lower than that. So
Okay.
this is the same with the bigger three-way. They're sharing the same
Right.
roof. It's a matter
Right.
of how much
And then the
performance.
second thing was your compensation circuitry that you have in there. Is that per device, or is it a generic compensation curve? In other words, do you tune it per speaker, or do you do it per model? Up, your microphone went off, Frederik. Your microphone went off. Bottom left.
Or push the space
Hey.
bar.
Oh,
Good.
here you
Let's
go.
try that.
I got it.
There we go.
There you go.
My bad.
Okay, so in reference to the
It's per model.
yeah,
It's per model. It's per model.
it
We
is
can't.
per model, but it is generic. It's not, you're not tuning it per individual speaker because they're all going to be consistent in that regard.
Yeah. We
Okay.
have decades
And
of experience when it
so
comes to.
you're compensating it for the per frequency that is abnormal, plus or minus what, 3, 2, 1,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's per two, and
2?
yeah, and then obviously depending on the power of the DSP, you have a limited amount of points,
Right,
checkpoint. You
right.
can, yeah, exactly, and
Okay.
that's
So
part of.
okay. And the latency of that DSP processing is how many milliseconds?
It's again depending on the base outreach of the model. It's between 10 and 16 milliseconds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We had a question in the chat. What is the main difference between your headphones and, for example, Sony MDR-M1? What is the price? Do you
Yeah.
close headphones with good isolation for minimum leakage? And what is the price for the Type 20 MK2? So there you go. Two questions.
Okay, so yeah, I mean the unique point of this headphone is the actual motor. So air motion transformers in full range just aren't available. We are the first to do that. So it's not an electrostat, it's not a planar headphone, it's not a dynamic headphone. In that sense, it's really its own thing. It's the fourth driver technology that's out there, and that actually that has big consequences for the sound and the sonic signature of these compared to the Sonys, for an example. Obviously, the Sonys are feather light. That's an advantage that they will always have over us. But other than that, I think it's vastly different in terms of sound and resolution. Closed back is something we are quite hesitant with because it will just add weight to something that's already quite heavy, and it's really hard to make an emotion transformer based headphone closed. This is probably still 2 or 3 years away until we have a solution there, I think, unless we say, how religious are we about air motion transformers? Maybe we can come up with a different with a smart idea for a dynamic driver that could also give us access to something below $1,000. There's obviously a lot of strategic thinking how we can build a headphone portfolio in both directions, more up and more down. We talk a lot about that stuff, obviously. And the price is $1999 for the headphone 2 and a pair of Type 20s here in the back. This is a limited edition blue version. Is I think in the US about $5K.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Michael Boddicker has a question.
Yeah, you say that you're using 32-bit 96K internal A to D and D to A on your speakers for the DSP, right? I've been looking forever for a mic pre that does 32-bit, and it's very difficult. I was just wondering how you accomplished it.
We haven't designed.
I see chips available that do it, but do you mind sharing how you were able to accomplish that?
So yeah, so I mean, obviously we're not designing the DSPs. Those are basically it's a Shark board with ESS technology on it, and because we were affected by the AKM burning catastrophe, I don't know if you've heard about that. We were on AKM first, and then we had to change just like almost everyone else to ESS. And those boards, I mean, this is not even the best that they can do, I think, these days. So if we would do like a next generation board, we would probably have to go for something higher than that. But yeah, it's a pre-existing technology that we're piggybacking on our internal infrastructure.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to share what it is, the chip information, if you're interested.
Well, what's who the manufacturer of the chip is?
It's ESS in Taiwan, I think.
ESS in
I
Taiwan.
can tell you the exact models. Yeah, I mean, if we say made in Germany, obviously that excludes certain things that you just can't get here. You know, like magnets, for an example. That's a monopoly, Asian monopoly. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Frederik.
Of course.
Well, great, Fred. Thanks for being here. And I know you want to get to Halloween stuff. It's what, 8, 9 o'clock at night in Germany?
Personally, I don't want to, but I have dressed up kids waiting for me at home. So yeah.
Well, thanks for coming along, explaining everything. And I don't know, guten Abend.
Yeah, gute Nacht. And thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Okay, so we have Chad Kelly. You still with us? Yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. And he's going to be here to talk about United Studio Tech. Take it away. We make microphones and everything else.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Barry. I appreciate the opportunity and thanks for hosting us. What I figured I would do, since we do a lot of trade shows and do the little 10-minute speech, but we never really get to go into the fun backstory on these products, and I thought it might be kind of fun to do that here and kind of give some of the deep dive behind the scenes kind of stuff. And so I'm just going to go over the 4 products that we have shipping now. I wish I could show some future stuff, but I'm NDA'd and I can't. So we're going to talk about just what's out and available now. So this is our first product, the UT FET 47. Of course, it's an homage to the original German U-47 FET that came out in the 70s. And this was our first product. We released this in 2017. It's something we're really proud of. We actually make it here in Baton Rouge. It's made in the USA, made by me. I don't have employees. It's just me. So I put these together, get some help from friends sometimes when it's overwhelming, but it's made to a very high standard and we're very meticulous with it. The cool backstory on this is a good friend of our company, Joe Carroll, a Nashville engineer who's a great friend to many companies. And it works for Produce Like a Pro and so forth. About 10 years ago, almost 10, maybe 9, I got the privilege of going on a Nashville studio tour with Joe, kind of leading the way. He took us through all the famous legendary studios that are on that strip in Nashville. It was one year for back in Summer NAMM. I think it was maybe 2015. And I was real, my eyes were wide open and I was looking at all these gorgeous studios, all these gorgeous rooms, and the things that I kept seeing, there were these recurring themes. Everybody had an SSL console. Everybody had ATC monitors. Everybody had between 2 and 8 distressors. Everybody had that classic green line 6 delay rack processor. And I kept seeing these recurring themes that I'm like, okay, these are the studio standards. This is what everybody can't live without. And the thing I kept seeing was original U-47 FETs and from the 70s, and they were duct taped together. They were I saw a lot of them that were duct taped, like this part was broken and there was duct tape around it and there was duct tape holding it to the mic stand. But they weren't in the mic closets. I saw those areas too. They were on stands like a Minuteman soldier, ready to be put in front of action, ready to go. That was the one mic I kept seeing in every studio. And again, this was a decade ago. This was before anyone had made an affordable, reproduction of that mic. And I thought to myself, why hasn't somebody reissued this yet? It's like kind of a no-brainer. And I was working for another company at the time, and I who have made a lot of successful reissues, but I had a concern that it wouldn't be done to the sort of OCD loving degree that I would want to, where it would be spare no expense. And so I just kind of kept that idea, instead of talking about it like I usually do. I kind of kept that in the back of the head there. And as fate would have it, a few years later, when I decided to move back to Baton Rouge and co-founded United, that was the first thing that came out of my head. I said, yes, we still got to do that, and so it just seemed like the perfect starting place. And, we began prototyping it. And again, I didn't want to do a spray painted mic body. I wanted it to be nickel electroplated. I wanted it to be milled from a solid brass billet. I wanted it to be mostly put together in the USA. I wanted, a great transformer. I wanted a great capsule. And so we kind of stuck to our guns, and we did that. One of the things I'd wanted to do, in some of the previous companies I'd worked for, was to sort of try to split the difference between German capsule engineering, where it all started, where it was done best, and Asian capsule manufacturing. Because a lot of people don't know this, but German engineers had taught the Chinese originally how to make capsules, about 70 years ago. And I thought to myself, but since then, things drift apart. And I thought to myself, it's time for a refresher course. I want to fly somebody out. And it was something that, for budgetary reasons, I couldn't do in some of the previous companies I'd worked at. But with United, where I had more control, I said, we're going to do it. And we flew Eric Heiserman out to Asia to teach our capsule provider how to make his capsule. And so we licensed that capsule from him, and it's made under contract. One of the other cool things I wanted to do was to make sure it had the right transformer. And it was one area where I kind of allowed myself to deviate a little bit from history, because the transformer we have, and I don't know how well this can be seen, but this is the transformer in our FET 47. That's made by Cinemag, who are fantastic, legendary transformer winders. And that's called a striped core. And I don't know if you can see the stripes, but that has layers of nickel with layers of steel. And we played with this back and forth until it matched the original THD profile of the original German part. So even though it's not a straight reproduction of that part, it matches sonically, and it's a beautifully made transformer. A cool story about this part is I got to visit the Cinemag facility after NAMM a couple of years ago, with my hopes on seeing this being made. And I, had my heart set on seeing it being wound, because they invested more than six figures into new automated winding equipment to make this thing. They innovated some things, like they robotically wind the Faraday shield instead of it being a manually applied foil shield, and some other cool stuff. And I wanted to see this in action, because we had to kind of help them invest in this process. And it turned out Cinemag had ran out of storage space at their main location, and so David Guerin, the owner, had gotten an old friend of his, who was well into retirement, a retired engineer, to free up some of his basement. And they put all this new winding machinery in this guy's basement. So it's this fellow who's a retired engineer, who's really good and well into his 80s, who kind of rests in a reclining chair in his living room, and every couple hours he gets up and goes down into the basement, and he checks on the machines and pulls the bobbins off and puts fresh wire on and hits the start button again. And every week, David Guerin goes over to this guy's house and collects them in a box and brings them back to Cinemag to be, finished. And so I never got to see that process, so it was kind of disappointing. But it is really cool how that all worked out. But yeah, we've been shipping that product now since, 7 years now. So time flies, and that's kind of what put us on the map, and it's gotten a lot of great press, a lot of great reviews. We still build them by hand in small batches. I think I'd make 3 or 6 of them at a time at one sitting. They're burned in, they're QC'd. A lot goes into it. So it was, I felt like we started off on the right foot, and still super proud of how that mic came out. Our next one, the Twin 87, this one came out about 3 years ago now. The UT Twin 87, I don't know if you can see it well. There's a really cool backstory to this one too. So for those who don't know, this is sort of our answer to the 87, but it has two different modes. There are two different boards in here. And you know, I wasn't planning to open this, but I might do so. So I don't know if you can see, there's one board here.
Barry, can we,
There's
well, I
another
guess we
board
can
here.
personally pin it if we want to.
Yeah, I can send you some pictures later. So this has two completely different driver boards in it. So here's the backstory. So this went through a lot of evolution and incarnations. When we first started developing this about 2017, 2018, it was just going to be a straight reproduction of the late 60s 87, you know, nothing more, nothing less. And what happened was John Haber, who owns Rad Distribution that carries our products, I talked to him about it, and he said, you know, John also owns Alto Music. He sells mics, and he said, well, you know, the problem is most people aren't privileged enough to have an original 87. They have a U87 AI if they have any, and if they've had the privilege to use one, it was more than likely an AI, you know, a later edition. And those are much hotter. They're a little hotter. Well, they're a lot hotter, and they're a little brighter. And he said, you know, people are going to pick up yours, and they're just going to think something's wrong with it because they're going to need way more gain, and it's going to sound a little darker and all this kind of stuff. And he said, John asked me to put in like a little boost circuit, a little boost / EQ circuit that would sort of approximate the sound of the AI and put a little switch on it. And I said, you know, and I made one that did it. We were able to play around with the feedback and some other components and sort of do that. But it just felt gimmicky to me. And I called him back and I said, I like where you're going with this. I think that's the right idea, but will you give me another year to actually do it, to do it for real? Like I don't do anything halfway. I said, we're going to do it. Let's actually do it. So what we wound up doing was acquiring like a golden specimen AI from manufactured about 2010. And we temporarily acquired use of a golden specimen from the late 60s. And we got to the bottom of what those differences actually are. We teased apart the entire circuit and figured out where the component value differences are, how the capsule was polarized originally versus how it's polarized now. We were able to document every little change and represent all those changes on a separate driver circuit, like on a separate board. So when you flip the switch on the Twin 87, you're switching between two different driver boards. You're basically switching between the original circuit and the later circuit, and then they both bottleneck together to the output transformer. And of course, that's where we had to compromise and put one transformer there. And instead of trying to track all the little minor differences between the different ways the transformers were wound and the different orientations that they had and so forth, we actually wound up coming up with our own transformer. And I have that for show and tell here. And you might be able to tell this transformer is a little bigger than the classic part. If you've ever opened up a U87, this transformer is a bit larger. And it's not huge, but it's about as big as the real estate allows in that type of, you know, body. And one of the reason for that is because I didn't want anything to kind of restrict the low end. And I always, as much as I love the classic 87, I always felt like there was sort of not a high pass filter, but a restriction in the bottom end. And I traced some of that to the fact that it is a pretty petite transformer in there. So we enlarged that a bit, and it opens up the bottom just a little bit more. That's the low frequencies have a little more dynamics. And you know, we're pleased with that. So again, it was another deviation from, you know, what was classically done. And I'm never afraid to deviate when I think it's a good idea to. Like, you know, if we find something where we clearly think, you know, I know why they did this, but I think this could be better if we did that, we'll do that. So we're not one of those companies, and there are companies that make just religiously adherent, you know, reproductions of certain products. We're not one of those companies. We get close, but if I have it in my mind that there's a better way, we're not afraid to do that better way and to explain our reasoning for doing so, you know. So but there's a lot of things that we were pretty adherent of, even though you don't want to go near that sort of conical head basket shape for fear of litigation. We were able to match the mesh gauges. So this is the multi-layer mesh that they're all the same gauges and they're in the same order as, say, the original 87 head basket. We actually measured it. measured the mesh with calipers and figured out what it was, what the mesh spacing and gauge was, and copied that. So anytime you have a head basket, you're going to have comb filtering, you're going to have sonic effects. That's kind of unavoidable. We just wanted to have the same ones. Whatever it's doing to mess up the original, we wanted ours to be messed up in the same way. So even though the shape is wildly different and it's not reminiscent of the classic unit, it sonically is. And that's the part that matters the most. And a lot of people have remarked that that they really like both models. I think most people go for the vintage setting, and that's probably for nostalgic reasons. But one of the cool things, I really didn't realize we would get a big audience here, but voiceover work, particularly animation, it took off. And I never even was looking at that market, but we found a whole lot of people who do, like, say, cartoons that they have to voice, it's not SpongeBob, but something like that, where they have to do a few different characters. They're the sponge and they're the crab and they're the oyster or whatever, and they'll switch modes to to quickly give themselves a different voice to help them get into different characters. I thought that was really cool. There's one more Easter egg on here that I wanted to. There's actually two. So there's these little dip switches, and I don't know if you can see these tiny switches right here. That turns on and off the RF filter that the AI has, and the original does not. So that was kind of added for broadcast reasons, because people were picking up RF interference on the 87, and they put this little RF filter that basically acts like a low pass filter, blocking RF and anything outside the audio range on the audio output. And there was on the what's it called? Not what's the page that was formerly called Gear something? Gearspace. Yeah, is it Gearspace now? It's on Gearspace. There was a big to-do about 10 years ago where people argued that RF filter is why the original 87 sounded better. And I didn't buy into that, but I thought, how cool would it be to actually give you access to that filter and let you turn it on and off and make up your own mind as to whether you like that RF filter. And interesting enough, even though it's splitting hairs, I do hear it. And it almost sounds like, with the filter on, that somebody puts a set of book ears on the bandwidth and very slightly sweetens the top end. And with it off, it just sounds more open. I mean, it's minuscule, but I heard it, and I thought it was actually pretty cool that you could hear it. Another cool thing that we did on here that was based on a mod that I had seen people do to some vintage 87s, where they would turn it into a cardioid only mic by disabling the rear diaphragm. It gives you a little better signal to noise ratio, a little hotter output. We were able to incorporate that in, so when you set it to cardioid, you get that mod just sort of baked in. And then when you go to figure 8 or omni, those patterns, the pattern circuitry kicks back in. So you just get a little bit better performance out of it in cardioid mode. It was something we realized we could do, and it didn't cost much to sort of add that mod. So the mic almost became sort of a tribute to all the geeky things I've heard people say about the 87 over the years, about the cardioid mod, about the RF filter mod, and we just sort of wanted to give people the power to actually play with all those parameters themselves. Not to mention being able to switch between the vintage and the modern, without having to change out microphones. And you do hear with the modern, it's a little more articulate, a little more crisp, it's a little hotter, and with the vintage, it's way more forgiving, a little more rolled off. So there is a difference there, and I have heard people say that difference didn't exist or it was exaggerated, but once we were able to build a working unit, we certainly could hear that difference. So in a way, it's almost like a lab experiment that you can own, because you can see for yourself what these different things do, and what's true and what's false, and what works for you and what doesn't, all kind of with one product. So I'll get on to the next one. So this is our first little small box. We put out two at the same time. This one is called the Vintage Direct, and that is a vintage style DI box, and that's the IO, and this thing is built like a tank. And there's a pretty interesting backstory to this one as well. So what I've been watching with DI boxes over the past 20 years is I've seen them get smaller and more economical. I've seen transformers get littler and littler, and I've seen even some that are unshielded. I've seen where people are putting, pots and resistor networks and other things in front of that transformer to act as a pad to protect it, because when it's very small, it can clip easily. But that can also rob tone. And I just felt like there's so many people doing that already. If everyone else is going right, I'm going to go left and go the total opposite direction. So we based this around what I call our namesake company, the United Transformer Company from the 1950s, UTC. And I know we were talking about UTCs, Barry and I were before we hit record. That was kind of an inspiration for why we named our company United. And I thought, how cool would it be to go back to some of the earliest DI boxes that were made with Triad parts and with UTC, Western Electric, and others. So I based this around the UTC A10, which I considered the best out of that series of transformers that people used to DIY and hand wind their own direct boxes back in the day before there was such thing as a direct box, when studios were just making their own out of these sort of off-the-shelf transformers. And these transformers were not specialized DI transformers that exist today. They were they were larger, they were more general purpose parts, they had a heavier magnet wire, a larger lamination stack, and they were almost always turned around. They were transformers that were made for something else that were being turned around to become a step down instead of a step up. And so we went back to that. And the original UTC A10, it looks like a D-cell battery if you've ever seen one. And we couldn't go with a reproduction of that can because it would have stuck out from the top of the box. So what we did was the internal parts are the same, but the can is more modernized. So that's the size of it. The thing is huge. I mean, it's an enormous transformer. And I don't know of any direct box that uses something so big and has such serious shielding too. I mean, this mu metal can is enormous and it's thick, and I think it gives about 35 dB of rejection. Adds a whole lot to the cost of an already expensive transformer, and it's I'm really proud of how that came out. We worked on that for years, so we actually acquired an original UTC A10. It was rusted over, it was old, it had to be cut in half with a bandsaw and pulled apart. We had to examine the gauge of the magnet wire, the lamination, the bobbin, the stuffing material. We looked at everything in it, and some of those things are just not obtainable anymore, but we got it as close as we could. And it went through a whole lot of iterations. And one of the things that was so frustrating and hard, I mean, we literally spent years tweaking a single transformer, which drives me nuts to think about, but it had to be right. And one of the things I wanted was I didn't want it to have too much character, because I'm a big fan of reamping, and I'm a big fan of capturing clean, hospital grade DI tracks that can be used to do other things with later. But I also didn't want it to be sterile. And the original, handmade DI boxes were anything but sterile. They were kind of beefy sounding and woolly sounding. So we were able to split the difference. So when you use the Vintage Direct, it's got character, but not too much. It's got a weight added to it and a bit of a glow. But it's not so untrue to the source that you can't take that and run it through an amp later with a reamp or something like that. So and we're not planning to make a whole series of DI, so I was not going to come out with the transparent DI and the colored DI. I wanted to get it one and done, and that meant it had to really check a lot of boxes. And it took longer to get it out than it really should have, but I'm super proud of the end result. And another thing I've just got to say about this thing is it's durable as all heck. It has a sort of a recessed front panel and recessed back panel. This clamshell is not two pieces; it's one piece of solid milled aluminum. It's thick. I knew this thing would be stepped on stage, stepped on in a rehearsal room. It would fall off of somebody's guitar amp 20 times. I knew. I've seen what stuff looks like when it comes in for repair, because I've worked in this industry my whole life, and I'm always thinking of how can you make things bulletproof and make everything as recessed and ruggedized as humanly possible. Even that transformer has a ton of bracing in it, because in our original drop tests, we found we were able to stress test it and cause the transformer to peel off from its PCB because of its weight. So even that is internally braced to where it can't go anywhere. We made it as just, someone will always find a way, but we made it as indestructible as humanly possible so that it would just last a lifetime. So really proud of that one. This is the next product is the latest one that we have out. It's called the Replay Box, and it basically is a companion product, and that is a reamp, and that's the front panel. That's the back panel with all the I/O. Again, the same ruggedized chassis, the same recessed front panel and back panel, the same recessed switches, made as durable as humanly possible. I have one of its transformers on hand, and I don't have the other because I didn't have it in stock currently. There are two transformers in this guy. So the backstory on this is pretty interesting. This box really goes back to my roots as a tinkerer, hobbyist slash recording engineer. I think it goes back about more than 20 years. I think I was working. I had the privilege to work on a record at a studio in Texas. I want to say about 20 years ago. And we were reamping a lot of tracks, and we were using a pair of reamps that were available on the market at the time. I think they're still available. They're pretty popular. They use a wall wart, and the thing that kind of struck me about them is that they didn't have very good output level. They had terrible output level, to be honest. We had to use a boost pedal. We had a 10 dB guitar boost pedal after each one of them called the hot shot pedal. And even then we struggled with noise, with level. And by the time you have that much gain, of course you're struggling with noise. And so the guitar tracks wound up being noisy. It was frustrating. When I came back to Baton Rouge from that studio experience, I was like, there's got to be a way to build a better mousetrap. And so I started researching it, and I found that, there was of course an original reamp, the one that was trademarked and patented, that was passive, that used a transformer. And so I said, aha, and I got one of those. And that one was better. It still, to me, did not have enough gain, and it to me had kind of a nasally sound, very mid-centric, and it also was out of phase. So I had to build like a phase reverse patch cable to remember when I tied it in, so that my reamped guitars would be in phase with the original guitars. And so I felt still like that was a bit lacking. And I read up on it, and they said, well, the sound is voiced for guitar. But in my mind, reamping isn't just for guitar. I'm reamping bass. I'm creative in the studio. I've reamped vocals. Have reamped kick drum. I've reamped snare. I've reamped the top snare mic into a guitar amp with the distortion and the drive up, with another a snare drum leaned on it with the snares turned on, and the snares vibrating from the amp speaker and a mic on that, like to get a bottom snare mic after you record the drums if you forget to get that mic. Yeah. And so there's all kinds of reasons for a reamp. And so you wouldn't want to voice it for guitar. You would want to have it be transparent. Not to mention, this thing should be an interface between your studio world and your guitar pedal collection, so that you could bring in any pedal you like. Say you wanted the reverb from a pedal on your lead vocal. Well, you need a transparent reamp and DI that stay out of the way to make that transaction. And so we made ours just absolutely transparent. And I started making this 20 years ago when I had that first inspiration to do it, and I was making them by hand for decades, and sold under a different brand name that I was just handcrafting them in my garage as people would request them. And for whatever reason, through word of mouth, the requests never died down. They only continued to come up as more people picked up on it. And at a certain point, I would say about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe longer than that, someone suggested to me that since the one I made was so transparent, that I should make one that intentionally had color. And so, I said, well, that's an interesting challenge. So I was able to find another transformer that existed on the market that, when used in an unorthodox way and configured a certain way, would give me some saturation and some low mid harmonics. And I was selling that one as an alternative box called the Angry Reamp, or Angry Amp, as some of my customers named it. And it was kind of an alternative reamp to the transparent reamp that was just surgical, mastering grade, And so after making both of these things for a few years and my hands getting more tired, it was suggested to me that we should convert that over to the main company, to United, and just, free me up to do more design work for future products and let United have another, SKU. And I said, well, I'll do it, but I had some caveats to that. I was really familiar with the saga of the Klon Centaur pedal and how everybody preferred the original handmade one and didn't want the mass-produced one, even though that pedal, for all intents and purposes, was a faithful reproduction. And I said, I'm not going to be a Klon Centaur. I want this to be done right if it's going to be done. And so I said, if anything, we have to make it better. So it's got to be the exact same transformers that I always used, the same quality of connectors, the same quality of switches. And thankfully, we were able to do all of that and then some. We made it even better. Like this is actually a custom made pot, and it's 10 to, I forgot the number of rotations it's rated for, but it's 10 times more than the alpha pot that I was using on the handcrafted one. So the handcrafted one would have lasted for 10 years without needing a new pot. This one should last 100 years, but by the same metric. And the switches are all gold contact sealed switches. The traces are wide curved traces with very few vias, and it was made to sort of mimic the flow of a point-to-point wired device like the original handmade one was. We even obsessed on the circuit board, layout. So I feel like we did it justice. I do still have occasionally people email me and say, can I still get the handcrafted one? And I'll always have to deal with that. I'm like, no, you can't. I'm not going to compete with myself. So you got to buy this one. But one of the cool things when you're in your garage, you can't do nice silk screening or custom fabrication like this. It's never going to be as nice. And I tell people, I said, the aesthetic alone is worth buying the new one, not to mention just the confidence that every one of them are going to be identical, repeatable, made to the same high standard, and so forth. And so the replay box has been, it took a while for people to get over that I'm not handcrafting it anymore. I am still involved in oversight over the whole process, but it is starting to really take off. And there's a lot of people that use this that are, influential, from Ben Folds to Andy Sneap, and a lot of YouTube personalities that say that that's their sort of benchmark reamp that they judge other reamps by. I mean, there's a lot of folks I know who haven't made a record in 10 years without using that device for everything. So really proud of how that one came out, and shocked that it's still going 20 something years on, and more people are still finding out about it every day. But anyway, that's all I've got for now, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, let's see, looking at the chat, nothing yet, but thanks so much, Chad.
Barry?
Yeah, where's that?
I have two questions.
Okay, Andy.
Number one, on your U87, of course, you were emulating the 87 and the 87 AI.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked into just doing a transformerless output unit to go to the next level?
Yes. Yes. Short answer is yes. We have some prototypes that essentially give you an 87, what I call it's not a great way to word it, but a poor man's 87, where one thing that's interesting when you start trying to reduce cost on the 87 or migrate it to like a more modern, mic amp design, the 87, just like the 67, have what you might call a pre-emphasis and de-emphasis scheme, where the K87 has some brightness to it, the capsule itself, and then the amplifier board has some built-in de-emphasis that takes that brightness down, and that's essentially how Dolby noise reduction works. It's a way of just reducing the overall self noise of the system. So when you start trying to modernize all of that, the first thing you want to do is come up with a more neutral K87 to balance against a neutral transformerless driver board that's just very flat. And we've done that work. I hope I'm not giving away the farm, but we've done that work. We don't know when that will be a product, but that work has been done, and it will save a lot of money. And I look forward to the day when we can have that happen. Yeah.
Okay. And the second question is this: it's like something old is something new. Back in the early 70s, I commissioned Dean Jensen to make a high-level, low-level direct box. There was nothing like that on the street. There are people who had high-level units like in Nashville and low-level units in New York, and I wanted to combine the two. And we used originally an A10, as you're using now, and Dean tried to do something with it. I had to revert to anything that was high-level extension speaker output of an amp. I had to go back to the A10. I couldn't use Dean's unit. But we also, on his box, we introduced a low pass to emulate the speaker. Speakers don't go out, 12-inch speaker is not going to go out to 20K. It's going to roll off. Now, because you were moving so quickly on camera, I couldn't quite see. Do you have a low pass on it? And what frequency is it if you have one?
On our DI, we didn't do it just because I was trying to keep the circuit very minimal. And I apologize for jumping around on the unit. There are some controls. So you have an output attenuator. One of the switches is a 12 dB output attenuator.
Right.
a UPAD resistor network based on PRP resistors, which are the resistors made for NASA that are made in where are they made? Illinois, not Illinois. They're made in the United States. I forgot where PRP are out of. But they're super audiophile thin film resistors. We have a phase reverse, which just reverses the output XLR. And we have a ground lift, which and I should have mentioned this, that both the replay box and the DI have what I call true ground lift, where the input and output are decoupled from each other. They're truly, in other words, the input is truly ground isolated. Right. And a lot of boxes, you'll find ground lift is just a switch that lifts the chassis from pin 1, but doesn't really change the ground scheme, and so it often doesn't do anything.
The way you're doing it is the way we did it at Bell Sound, New York, with their direct boxes. Yeah.
Excellent. But yeah, no filtering. We were trying to just keep it pretty minimal. I felt like you can do that on the preamp or within the DAW easily enough. I guess I didn't feel the need to do it.
All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Great, Chad. Thanks for coming in here and taking time to do this. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody is very appreciative of this stuff. We're trying to have these more and more, more tutorial, as I said in the email, where you learn about the product, not just a glorified press release, or a equipment review like what I write. Last reminder, let me see if I can share this. Yeah, so just a reminder, tomorrow the embargo is off, and you can, if you contact me, I'll give you the link to get this free plugin from Sound Toys as a come on to buying their version 5, which is all their plugins. So this is Phase Mistress. I've used this in the past. It's pretty good, pretty wacky. So give me an email, or rather go to my Facebook page, I think, and tomorrow. So there you go. Any more questions? I have a new message. Let's see what this. Michael Boddicker says, Chad, thank you for your commitment to excellence. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, coming from Michael, especially because he's used to doing that, right, Michael? And
that's been the goal.
Yeah, we all try. Yeah, it's
trying to balance budgets and time, but Chad, you seem to have put your excellence before any of that. You go, I want to do it right, and it was really nice to hear. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Yeah, audio has been a singular obsession of mine for probably about 35 years. So I hope I get it right, because it's about the only thing that I do.
So glad you got to see all those studios before they turned into apartment buildings.
Yeah.
On Music Row, but are you considering building an actual, not an actual, the FET 47 is an actual 47, but I'm just Tube 47. Have you thought about that?
Oh gosh, I am trying to see.
You're not allowed to talk about it.
I was just told today what I may and may not allude to. So I am only today able to allude to that. But in the coming weeks, we may have something very exciting to show. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks
Chad,
for the heads up.
I do have one question,
Okay,
Chad.
Andy.
Last question. When you disabled the second capsule and went into strictly cardioid, did you compare that to how it functioned when it was in bidirectional, as far as noise and headroom and everything?
I got you. So yeah, when you decouple the rear diaphragm, you do have to let things discharge for a moment or two. What you'll on the 87, there's not really a difference in frequency response. There's not an enormous difference in pickup pattern, although there slightly is, but it's negligible. What you mainly see is the self noise stays put while the signal gets hotter. So by default, you'll bring down your preamp and you'll have a better signal to noise ratio. And that was why people did it kind of on the early units, was to squeeze a little bit more signal to noise ratio out of it, because they knew it was just going to be in a vocal booth in a vocal position, and they weren't going to use figure eight or omni. And if that's the case, then you could just get a tiny bit more performance out of it by taking off the pattern circuitry. And that's all that we noticed. And other than the minor inconvenience of waiting a few moments for the circuit to stabilize, there wasn't really any other sonic cost to it, so it just made sense to do it.
So did you have an opportunity to observe the IM distortion characteristic differences?
Not a distortion measurement. There was nothing audible or in the sweep measurements we could do that really.
Because we had been consistently using, once I got informed by Steve Desper, one of the old Beach Boys mixers, about lower IM distortion between cardioid and bidirectional, I was a believer, and I've been using that for maybe 30, 40 years now. Especially for voiceover work.
You've been using it in bidirectional?
In bidirectional, almost strictly for many of there are so many benefits. I couldn't believe it once I got into it, and I really got into it.
Oh yeah, that was the Al Schmidt, philosophy. That was why he loved everything in either omni or figure eight. Yeah, he really talks about that in his book, and there's truth to that. What I didn't know about the intermodulation distortion, but I certainly know that the peaks and valleys of a capsule are exaggerated when they're put in cardioid mode, because a capsule essentially doesn't want to be a cardioid device. It wants to be omnidirectional, and you always get the most neutral response when it is closest to behaving the way it wants to behave. And in cardioid mode, you have the peaks and valleys just become sort of expanded, and yeah, it's just not as flat. And
well, we were able to have our performers, mostly voiceover and animation, be more animated. They could physically move around with the bidirectional pattern, because I could have them move further back, and it also rejected a significant amount of bounce off the music stand if we had a music stand.
Oh yeah, the side rejection.
So and then of course rejecting people side to side. If you had about like 10 people in the room, you got to be careful about all of the feedback. I mean, not feedback, but the leakage.
Oh
it
yeah,
it was pretty interesting. I was shocked that it changed my whole world. That back way back.
Oh yeah, I've been doing it that way more ever since reading Al Schmidt's book and realizing, oh yeah, he's right. And it was just something I had always observed in the sweep measurements, that the omni and figure eight get closer to flat than cardioid, which has a more exaggerated sound, more high. And yeah, if you have a well-treated room, then there's not going to be much of a sonic cost to that. If you don't have a well-treated room, then I'm going to advise against it,
Actually, I will tell you quickly that I had a guy in Australia that hired a music studio to do some ADR for us here in the United States, and it was all being done remotely with Source Connect. And the guy had, X amount of microphones, but they were all about music, and the room was hot. He had glass on two sides, and it was a big deal. I ended up having him take the U87 and put in bidirectional pattern facing the floor and the ceiling, and then moving the mic around until finally found a dead spot. Oh, by the way, I also asked him to put a couch on its side, stuff it in the corner, because that was a hot spot there. But we were desperate. We had the actress was going to go disappear that afternoon. We wouldn't see her in 3 months. We're trying to finish this movie. So we used the 87 at bidirectional pattern, and if anybody can see me, had basically the microphone like this, facing down and up, and found the right spot to make it sound sort of like, a shotgun microphone that was used in the original production. Okay. And we were desperate, but we couldn't have done that in cardioid or in omni.
Where is the talent, Andy? Where is the talent in that setup?
Where was the talent? The talent was in Australia.
No. Where was the person doing the voiceover? Where were they positioned relative to the mic?
Well, to the microphone. Okay, again, maybe about the talent was about off center from the center of the room because of other characteristics, standing waves. But the microphone was probably about 6 inches in front of them and 6 inches above them. the pattern, the bidirectional pattern facing the
So
floor and the
the
ceiling.
mic was overhead, over their head.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but 6 inches in front and 6 inches above. That
Okay.
was what ended up for that room under those crazy circumstances. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, you always get great vocal performance when it's amazing how many people aren't aware of that. It should be over you, and it allows you to kind of, when you tilt your head back a little bit, you know all the voiceover guys know this, that you get a better vocal performance. It's not supposed to be like, you know, facing forward. I mean you can do it, but the pros that I've talked to, they always kind of have it like that. And
If you have a dead room,
yeah.
you need a, you know,
We did.
you want to carpet everything. You can't have any reflections. Sounds like the mic you were using also took care of the mode. I don't know how high the ceiling was, but probably took care of the vertical mode. Right, Andy?
Yes, basically, it was a typical like a 7 or 8 foot high ceiling.
All right,
It had all kinds of issues. Yeah,
but the vertical room mode would be around 70 hertz for an 8 foot ceiling.
Right.
So.
Well, luckily, I didn't have to do any EQ. We were able to match up what was done on location in Poland, so that was all right.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Okay. If everyone is, anybody, any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I would like to ask everybody, this is when I was just recording yesterday and I used first time this radio GS3, like mic splitter, and I was using this microphone, this M149, and I ran one preamp to Apollo interface and one from Millennia STT1. And I figured out, because I'm kind of learning this stuff, I figured out that I didn't have signal in one track only if I assign interface on the same input. So for me, it was kind of unlogical. So basically, simplify, if I want to record, I couldn't assign, for example, input 7, where was my Millennia, and input 1, where was my Apollo. So I have to put on the same input. I'm wondering why. I'm wondering why.
Well, if you were trying to send them to a stereo track.
No, microphone was not stereo. No, it wasn't stereo.
Oh, but you had two outputs from the same microphone.
Yeah, I was using GS3 radial splitter, mic splitter.
Right, but you're trying to send them to the same stereo track, or you tried to send it to a mono track?
No, mono track. It's basically microphone going to the transformator, and after going to input to GS3, and from GS3 going to output, one going to Apollo, where I use preamp from Apollo, another one I use preamp from Millennia STT1. Like
but if you put them together on one track, you're going to
one track. They were separate track. Each
separate track.
If you mix the two tracks together, you're gonna have a problem.
Exactly. But my question is why
it's going to be a phase.
My question is why I didn't get signal, recording signal in the Pro Tools. It was coming to my Apollo. So only way to do it, I have to assign each of preamp on the same input. For me, it's very confusing. Why?
I'm not really following what you're doing there.
No, that sounds to me like it's an I/O problem or an input problem. It's not a Pro Tools problem. It has to do with either one of the cables wasn't working to your interface, or in the I/O there was something not kosher.
So they should be on the interface on each input in the Pro Tools. Assign it.
Each of those outputs from your two different devices should be on a separate input, and if you label them correctly, you should be able to choose them on your track and put each track in record and be fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
I could only one microphone, right? Just one mic.
Only one microphone.
All right. So,
I'm wondering,
how did you get the mic audio multed? In other words, to both inputs. Did you use a mult or a splitter or something?
He said the radio.
Yeah, I use a radio splitter.
Radio. Okay, so it got phantom power to the mic. Okay, got it.
GS3. Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of asking for trouble in that situation. Keep it simple, man. One mic, one track, That's it.
No,
You just wanted to hear the difference?
No, I
Oh,
wanted compare sound because, for example, when I put bass through Millennia STT1, comparative with Apollo, because I can do without splitter disc, it sounds just. I use my very good bass, Fodera bass. It sounds just more, more harmonics, more warm. But I just
and that's what you use from now on. Problem solved.
yeah, but for microphone was different issue. It was bass, but I wanted to compare microphones, But I had problem with this input. Only what I could get is that I assigned the same input. I don't know if you understand me.
Oh yeah, so you're using a mic splitter to compare different preamps to one another.
Exactly.
Got it.
That was purpose. Yeah.
That's a
And
good
so
idea.
Yeah.
if you were using an Apollo interface, I know they have that console software that's sort of like in front of your DAW. Were you getting
Exactly. Console. Yeah. Console.
yeah, when you were trying both of the when you were trying on two different tracks, were you metering both of those and you just couldn't hear the other signal, or there was no
very
meter?
good question. Okay. On console, everything cool. Let's say Apollo on input 1 signal, Millennia input 7 signal. After we go to Pro Tools, and normally you open in Pro Tools input 7, yeah, from Apollo, input 1 in Apollo. But if I did that, signal from Millennia didn't go there. So, but if I put same input, let's say input 1 and input 1, even if Millennia is connected input 7, I could record.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it was.
I didn't figure out why, but anyway.
Yeah, I think it was likely a problem in your console settings that wasn't getting it successfully to your DAW. What the actual problem there is, I don't know, but I know there's some confusion because of that console software that's in front of basically the DAW. So I would just make sure everything is correct and routed appropriately within console to get it to your DAW, because it sounds like that's where the problem is. If you have metering on console but you couldn't get it to your DAW, that's where the problem lies, somewhere within the routing.
You should borrow I make a Jensen transformer mic mult, one mic in, 4 outputs. You should borrow that from me. Then you can even confuse yourself more. Go to 4.
I have 3. I have now 3, Barry. No 4.
All right. So I made this thing for reviews when I get a couple of preamps or somebody wants to. I'm not into ABs at all. I hate those things because it doesn't mean anything. It's not useful to me to AB. Oh yeah, if I AB a Neve preamp with a SSL, yeah, they're different. Okay. Next story. Next, you know what I mean? So I made this because somebody wanted to know how does it compare to that or how does it compare to this one and blah 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 blah. So I made this. Jensen makes it. I have the schematics on my homepage. You can download the schematic and build it. It's about $100 transformer. I put an aluminum box with connectors. It's got ground lifts. Input 1, you put phantom power if the mics need phantom power. It's pretty simple.
I think those are great tools to have. And you're right. It's not for A-Bing, but I love things like that because I'll take like a vocal track and I'll want to split it and send one straight into the preamp and into the workstation, and the other one will go to a preamp and into like a live reverb to feed into the monitoring for the artist, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you use 2 preamps, you can even mix it to get some another sound if you want.
You can. I mean,
that's why I'm using, not just for comparing, for future, for coloring, I mean, to get different vibe of sound.
Borrow my Jensen mic mult. I think he makes one now too in a box. So I just built it. It's got the transfer.
Who's he?
What's that?
You said he makes one in a box. Who?
Yeah, he does. Jensen.
Who's he?
Jensen
Transformers.
Oh.
It's also great. A box like that is also great for having a safety because a lot of people are afraid to commit to heavy EQ, heavy compression on the way in. But if you have a safety track, then you can do that without the fear of mangling your track, because you could have a totally
flat track.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you want to do it correctly, you use a mic mult.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it sure helps the artist when they hear sometimes the compressed mode of their voice, whether you're recording it to, directly or not.
Yeah. That's that's a good way to do it too.
Yep.
All right, guys, if there's any more, I'll cut it off now. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Edit up a video. I send him the files. He'll do a edit, and I'll upload it to YouTube, and you guys can get it's on my channel. I have it, believe it or not, I have a channel, and
Excellent.
you can download it if you want. Thanks.
And